Welcome to the Top 500 with Jonathan and Jake.
Ring.
Hello?
Hey, this is this podcast support?
This isn't podcast support, but it's podcast IT help, if that's what you were
that
looking for. I can
sounds
transfer
like-
you over to support.
Yeah, could you do that really quick?
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay. It's a confusing song.
Hi, this is podcast support.
Wow, hey.
Sorry, let me turn my levels down a little bit. We record, we talk on the phone on a microphone.
Yeah.
So you're hearing me through
Like
a
a
mic.
podcast.
It's just so we can control the levels and everything, just to make sure it's always coming through.
Listen, I'm not trying to keep this bit going forever, so I'll just get straight to the point. I need a co-host from the podcast. I'm starting a podcast. This is the first episode. And I need a co-host. Can you guys help me with that?
I mean, I can ask around. I don't think anybody can really help you around here unless the podcast is about movies or something.
It's
really
actually exactly about movies. It's a list of 500 best movies.
500 best movies.
It's called the Top 500. Yeah.
Well, my name is Jonathan Gautier, and I think that I could be your co-host on that podcast. What is your name?
Jake Magruder. And that's how it all started. Hey guys, welcome to the Top 500 podcast. Welcome to the Top 500. It's a podcast where two movie dudes talk about movies. We got a list of 500 best movies from the internet, and we watch them one by one and we talk about them. And my name's Jake.
My name is Jonathan. Welcome
John, how are you doing
to the podcast? I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing a lot better after watching tonight's movie.
I thought tonight's movie was just a delight.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
We started off with number 500 on the list.
Yes, we did.
Which was David Fincher's Gone Girl.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm going to stop you right there because I have a surprise for you. So we wanted to go all out. So we'll talk about how this show started and a little bit about us, but I thought before we talk about ourselves, we actually have a third co-host.
Do we?
We got it in the budget.
I'm clearly new to this podcast, so I was not aware.
So I thought I would just let him introduce himself.
Okay.
All right, so here he goes.
Hello, I am T500 Robot, and third co-host of the Top 500 podcast.
Can you believe it? We got a robot.
Incredible. I heard that they are very hard to get on podcasts.
They are so hard.
How did you bring that about?
Well, I thought actually maybe T500. You could tell us a little bit more about yourself. Is that okay with you?
Thank you, Jake. I am 30 years old and have been programmed to make announcements during the show's runtime, as well as deliver hilarious jokes when the other co-hosts have dropped their respective comedy ball.
Oh,
that's incredible.
He's like a funny.
That'll actually help out.
I feel like we're not very funny.
We're not very
Could
funny.
you give us an example of a joke, T500?
Okay, Jake. Here I go. Why was 6 afraid of 7?
Classic. Why was 6 afraid of 7, T500?
It was not. Both are numerical digits and therefore have no capability of abstract emotion.
Oh.
I know this because I have been programmed with a great understanding of the world of mathematics.
You would know.
He cracked himself up.
That's when you know it's a good joke, is when you can't hold your own laugh back.
I know. Yeah, I agree.
That's what shows.
Well, do you want to say something? Do you want to ask like a question or something?
T500, have you ever been in love?
I apologize, tall handsome man. I have only been programmed to respond to Jake at this time.
Oh, that's too bad. Maybe he'll like his programming get better as
that'd be nice
as we go along.
Yeah, if the budget goes up, maybe we'll get a T600.
You actually said something. T500. What movie are we watch? What movie did we all watch today?
Today's movie is David Fincher's Gone Girl, starring Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike.
Oh, that's my bad. I jumped the gun on that.
Everybody give it up for T500.
That was incredible. What a T500.
You'll be hearing more of his voice throughout the episode.
So.
I mean, we won't, because his programming only allowed him that much. I thought it would behoove the listening audience if we kind of introduced ourselves, and then in the first segment before we talk about the movie, introduce ourselves and kind of give a background of the show. So do you want to start?
Sounds good.
Tell us about yourself, how you got here, and your favorite movie.
Oh,
It's like one of those fun, like, first day of college things.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
tell
yeah.
us
The
your movie.
icebreaker.
Exactly.
The icebreaker, because everyone feels really awkward
Exactly,
right now. You can
yeah.
tell. Well, my
Except
name
for
is
T500.
T500 is clearly lax right now. He's feeling
He's
good.
awesome.
But no, my name is Jonathan Gautier. I'm actually from Bentonville, Arkansas. Living right now in Cape Girardeau. Just graduated from Southeast Missouri State University with a major in TV and film. I like writing a lot, which I would probably throw out there as a little factoid about myself. And my favorite movie is actually a movie called In Bruges, which stars Colin Farrell
Great choice.
and half of the Harry Potter cast.
You're right.
Yeah, there's a lot of Harry Potter people in there.
is
It's
a lot
very
of Harry
interesting,
Potter
and they all kill it. It's fantastic.
It's so good.
But you could tell, because of course everyone knows Harry Potter is like the
Prologue.
upper echelon of filmmaking.
Oh, I thought you meant Harry Potter was a prologue to In Bruges.
They're in the same world, probably.
Same
but
universe?
Yeah, there's
It was
just,
like before
it's
the
about
Marvel-
all the Muggles.
It's a Muggle movie.
It's a Muggle movie
For sure. My name is Jake Magruder. I am from right here in the boot heel of Missouri, as the locals
Misuras
call
say.
him. Him being Missouri. I also am currently at Southeast Missouri State University and majoring in the TV and film department, and I'm loving it. And I love writing and I love making movies, and I want to do that for the rest of my life. And my favorite movie, I go back and forth between, how can you beat 2001, right? But like, I think the one that I would watch most is Ferris Bueller.
Really?
Yeah.
That answer changes up sometimes. I really thought you were going to say Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I do love Scott Pilgrim versus the World a lot, and I do think it's like Ferris Bueller in that, and I think the same way you feel about In Bruges. I think it's perfect. But,
Yes. Also Rushmore by Wes Anderson. We'll
exactly.
get to those
So we like a lot of movies, unsurprisingly. A little background of the show. So we're recording this January
Third. Well, actually,
New Year.
it's midnight, so it's January 4th, as we're coming to you
We
live.
do a little late night session. Almost a year ago in March when everything started kicking up with He Who Shall Not Be Named.
Yes.
We recorded an episode of this show, but it was different. We were using a different list than the one we're using right now.
That list ended. The movie, the list was cut off in 2008.
Yeah.
So nothing past like Dark Knight Rises.
Exactly.
Dark Knight Rises time period, or not Dark Knight Rises, just Dark Knight was making it on
Yeah,
that
so we
list.
found a new list, which is what we're using for this edition of the show.
And this list is a lot more statistically accurate.
Exactly,
Now,
yeah.
the first list seemed to have been based a lot more on like blockbuster hits and like.
I think it was because it was made by the previous list, not to confuse everybody, but the previous list was made by Empire, which it's like a journalist source, I guess. And it seemed like they did the same thing this list did, where they took statistically what rated highest, but I think it was only what Empire had rated highest. So like over the last all the movies that
of
Empire
their own catalog.
Yeah, so this one is much more. First of all, it's got a lot more recent stuff up till I think early 2019, and then it is also statistically over the span of the internet. Like it's like IMDb score, Rotten Tomatoes, all the critics reviews, audience score. Like this list compiled a bunch of them. Yeah. So, but anyways, we recorded the first episode back in April, which was kind of like funny enough, our like little pilot for the show, because we recorded it, we put it online, we recorded a second episode. Never, because of circumstances, we never got the second episode up. And so, I don't know about you, I just kind of thought it was just like, okay, well, that was fun. And it was like it was a fun idea. Not really expecting it to make it come. We had talked about like, we should, pick it up.
It was in the pipeline for a long while, but it was put on the back burner.
I didn't see it picking up.
Yeah.
And then somebody from the Arrow Podcast Network said that they were looking for new shows. So on a whim one night on our couch, I just sent, it was already like private on YouTube. Like it wasn't public anymore. I just sent them the link and they picked it up. And so now we have the show.
So here we are.
Here we are. And I'm excited. 500 movies, only one can survive.
And only one can be number one.
That's right.
And you won't hear about that until
10 years from now.
10 years from now.
Potentially, if things go well, we got a good 10 years before.
That's true.
Hopefully you don't spoil it for yourself. Actually, ironically enough, on the YouTube video, we're going to put a link to the Letterboxd review. So if you guys want to keep up every week.
Or check the catalog out and watch some great movies for yourself.
Yeah,
and
get
just
ahead
wait
of
for the
us.
episodes.
Yeah. They'll be there. And so with that being said, I think we're going to take a little break, and then we'll come back and get into the meat of the movie, which is
Gone Girl.
David Fincher. Ben Affleck. Rosamund Pike. All right, well, here's a word from our sponsor, and then we'll be right back.
The top 500 will be right back after these messages.
Hi, I'm a lawyer, and I know what you're thinking, another law ad, how original. But here's the thing I think you probably haven't thought of. What if your lawyer needed a lawyer? Now, you'd think they would probably have some kind of control on that. They went to law school, so they know how to get a lawyer. Well, I'm here to tell you, they don't. And that's what I'm here for. Call me Bill. And I will be your lawyer's lawyer. Because if they do something wrong and they get disbarred, who's going to be their lawyer? Me. Bill. So, call me. My number is 1-800-LAWYER. With a Z. 2 Z's.
You have returned to the top 500 podcast with Jonathan and Jay.
Welcome back.
That was a good ad spot.
I know.
I really enjoyed
I think
it.
I'm going to get that thing that they were advertising.
Me too. I actually am already looking it up online. It's not very expensive.
I don't think we can afford expensive stuff yet.
I can't. Yeah, no. I'm not gonna. Well, anyways, so
Anyway.
tonight.
John, why don't you tell us a little bit about David Fincher's Gone Girl?
David Fincher's Gone Girl was adapted from a book by the same name. It basically takes place around Ben Affleck's character, a man named Nick Dunn, who comes home to find that his house has been semi-ransacked in a sort of suspicious way, while a lot of stuff is still kind of set up. So it's kind of suspicious right off the bat. But come to find out, his wife is missing. And so the whole story follows the drama that ensues, because a lot of questions are raised throughout the movie regarding whether his wife was kidnapped and murdered by somebody. There comes a lot of evidence throughout the movie that he murdered his wife, and then throughout the entire deal, you're not really sure until like halfway through the movie what exactly is going on, and if it's if he does have you keep learning secrets about.
You're doing great.
This is a terrible intro.
You're doing great.
Essentially, we are following his battle to try to prove that he did not kill his wife, as a lot of evidence becomes very apparent throughout the movie, pointing to the possibility that he did. Just to preface, if you haven't seen Gone Girl, you should probably watch it.
Yeah, for
I would
sure.
say before, because there's going to be a lot of spoilers throughout.
sure.
Like,
It's
we'll be
hard to-
talking about everything.
It's hard to really talk about it. The movie like really lives and dies by the mystery. It's a mystery movie.
Yeah,
you know?
the more blind you go into it, the
Yeah.
better. So I would not like, oh, well, I'll get the gist from this podcast and I'll go
Yeah.
watch it, because that really takes the fun out of the movie. The whole point of the movie is you are wondering what the heck is
sure.
going on the whole
For
time.
sure.
Can I trust the main character? Is he lying?
And also, if we couldn't spoil it, there wouldn't be a whole lot for us to talk about. I mean, it's
very
a Fincher.
true.
It's a Fincher movie, so
Yeah.
there's a lot to talk about visually, but it kind of lives and dies by that story. I thought it'd be fun. So again, we changed lists pretty recent, like within the last 48 hours. But one reason I was drawn to this list is because we actually have a weird kind of connection to this movie. So when I
do.
saw it was 500.
Yeah. It was perfect. It was the perfect pilot episode.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I thought I'd talk about it a little bit, and I want to because we have different perspectives on it. So I want to say like kind of the background of what was going on our end, and then kind of you walked into it. So, but ironically enough, this movie was shot in Cape Girardeau, like where we live.
Which is where we are living now.
And recording this very episode. And it's crazy because legitimately, again, we're TV and film students, and I feel like it's safe to say we're pretty into film, right? I feel like that's not...
And it's hard to express the gravity of David Fincher made a movie where we,
Exactly.
where we are living.
It would be like, not to overstate it, but it would be like if Picasso were to paint a picture
of your mom's house.
of your mom's house. It's exactly right. And no, dude, I mean, it was a huge deal. I mean, not only for people who liked movies. At that point, I was just getting into movies, so I knew Fincher did Fight Club, and I knew Fincher did Social Network, I think, probably. I had a loose grasp on what he did. Fight Club was his movie. That was like the Fincher movie in my eyes. So at that point, I didn't realize, I think, the true gravity of him being in Cape Girardeau. But, I mean, Ben Affleck was coming to Cape Girardeau. You know what I mean? Which was he was hanging around Cape Girardeau. People were taking pictures. He was going to places. People were following him around.
Just like the movie.
Quite
reminiscent.
Kind of like the movie.
I'm sure that was annoying for him on and off camera to constantly see cameras flashing.
Very method for him, you know what I mean? And no, dude, I mean, and that's kind of the cool thing is like watching it now, because that was, oh my gosh, they filmed it 13.
Yeah.
So it would have
Came out in 14.
7,
Or wait.
almost 8 years ago.
Oh yeah. No,
When they were
It was a
here.
while ago.
But it's cool because, you know, almost 10 years later, you watch this really, I mean, it really is, I feel like, I don't know, I want to get your kind of feelers on it after we kind of do this, but we talk about this, but I feel like it's a pretty solid flick.
Yes.
It's not just like a B movie that got shot here. I mean, it was doing Oscar campaigns, it was performed, you know what I mean? And it was shot in Cape Girardeau, and like, they did a screening of it, like at Warenberg, which is now Marcus in Cape Girardeau. If you're not in Cape Girardeau, this all sounds kind of like gibberish. But
Cape Girardeau movie theater.
But yeah, they did a premiere, and everybody went because, you know, you saw your neighbors' homes in the backyard. People were extras.
Yeah.
And there's one story I want to tell, but again, I was in East Prairie, which is about 50 miles south of here, southish, and it was still a huge deal. Like, people were driving from East Prairie to come up and see the set. And
were they letting a lot of people, like...
I feel like you could watch from a distance. You know what I mean? Like, a film set is, like, closed off, you know? And so, like, people were driving up in their cars
a couple
and
streets
stuff.
away, they can't really tell you to leave if it's not closed
if they were
off.
down by the river. But you have a different story. You came to Cape. Did you hear about it pretty soon when you came in, or did you know that it was filmed here when you got here?
No, I don't think... I feel like before I moved here, it might have been briefly mentioned by my brother who lives nearby, but I didn't really register because I actually had not seen Gone Girl, which I don't know why. I just hadn't really gotten around to watching it. But yeah, when I moved here, a place that I was working, it came up in conversation one time. People were like, "You haven't seen Gone Girl?" Like, yeah, they filmed that movie here. Ben Affleck was here. Oh yes, so I did actually know about it before I moved here because my brother. He had told me whenever he was trying to talk me into moving here, he was just like, yeah, man, this is even where they filmed Gone Girl. Ben Affleck was here. He hated it. He only wanted to go to one of the local Mexican restaurants, apparently, was his main thing. He just loved going, eating the salsa and chips. And yes, I heard he was at the gym a lot because he was training for Batman at the time.
True story.
Best role of his life.
Agreed. True story.
That is not my true opinion. I'm not saying he did bad, but it's
being facetious. You and T500 have been working on your humor. True story. If I remember correctly, I'm 90% certain he got the role announced that he was going to be Batman while he was in Cape Girardeau.
Oh,
like it was public information at that point.
Jeez, I bet that made him even more.
Oh yeah,
people.
I was thinking about taking my comic books because I was a big comic book head when I was a teenager, when I was in high school, and taking my comic books and trying to track him down and sign my Batman
Get him
comic.
to sign him? I bet he would have been very annoyed with you.
100%. I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad that didn't happen. I'm trying to keep it in the goods with Ben.
Yeah.
But anyways, go forth. He was in Cape.
But yeah, so yeah, when I moved to Cape, I was told by a lot of people that he had that the movie had been made here. And I think it was actually weird because in a way, Gone Girl was kind of how Fincher came on my radar. In reality, I had seen a lot of Fincher movies, but I didn't realize they were Fincher movies. Because before I moved here, it was probably I've always loved movies, but it was only like a year and a half before I moved here that I really started like getting into films. I started paying attention to different directors, and I would be waiting for movies that they had coming out. And then when I transferred to SEMO and got in the TV film department, my interest, I wouldn't say my interest grew, but kind of my obsession with filmmaking skyrocketed. And so it was funny because when people were first telling me about Gone Girl, I remember I kept having to ask, like, and who was it that directed it? Fincher, David Fincher? And I was just like, I don't think I know that name. And I think it was a conversation with you or one of our close buddies. I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was just like, what other movies has this guy made? And they were just like, oh, this guy that made Fight Club, Seven, and just, Social Network, and just listed off a bunch of movies. And it was like, oh, okay, those are a bunch of the best movies I've ever seen. So I should probably go ahead and watch Gone Girl.
I mean, it's wild when we were watching it. Like, there were moments where it was like, I don't know, it's different when you approach it as like a filmmaker, an aspiring filmmaker, right? Because we were watching the movie and there were moments where like we have walked there, and like Fincher was there making a movie. And it's like a different feeling because even, back when I was 14 and they were making it, I was just like, like, whoa, celebrities and like famous people. But now it's like one of truly, I think, the leading filmmakers of this generation.
Oh yeah, certainly.
At least in the last 30 years.
Well, I'd say like there's like a new generation coming in now.
Exactly.
He's one of the established. He's one of the the backside of all the.
Exactly. I'd say like 90s to the 10s. Yeah. Like he was the guy. You know what I mean? He was one of the guys, and. It's just an interesting feeling when you watch the movie, and we'll actually talk about the movie. But I feel like to do justice for one of our advisors and professors, Jim Dufek. I mean, he has the story that he tells every time, and I feel like he would want it on record.
Because he saved pretty much everything.
He really did. He tells this story when we're all together in the early days. I've heard it probably 3 times now. He says he saved Batman's life, which is, I think, a pretty accurate statement.
I think so as well.
So in the scene where
they do the outdoor press conference. If you've seen the movie, it's the scene where
candlelight vigil,
where the neighbor comes up and starts yelling, "What did you do? What did you do to your pregnant wife, Nick?"
And he's back there holding a candle, and
he's in the movie.
He's in the movie.
Our mentor and
hero.
Yeah, mentor and hero.
Hero is the word you're looking for. So anyways, they were filming, and at one point, Ben Affleck's character's like, I gotta get out of here. And he runs off the stage. And again, he had just gotten announced as Batman.
Yes.
So he runs off, and Dufek's watching it when they're doing prep, and he sees that he's landing on the ground pretty hard.
So initially, I think in the movie, the way they did it, they set up a little staircase or something like that he goes down. Initially, apparently what it was he just hops off the stage.
Yes, exactly.
He just like puts his hand on the ground and just, hops off. And it's probably a 4 or 5 foot.
It's a drop.
Yeah, it's a little drop.
So
I don't know about 5 feet.
So Dufek was watching them prep the shot, and he saw Ben Affleck hit the ground with his feet hard. And, he's going to be a matinee idol at this point.
Being Jim Dufek, he thinks to himself, you know what? I think I know a better way to do this.
That's exactly right. He's a filmmaker. He's a creator. And so he creates solutions to problems.
Yes.
And he says, hey, how about we get some steps for Ben to walk down?
And Fincher says to him, quote, no, I don't know if Fincher replied, but they agreed with the idea. They thought,
steps in the movie.
Yeah, because he brought up, he was just like, what are the odds that the 34th time, because that is another thing about David Fincher. The man, he's a modern Kubrick.
Yep.
He's loves doing
perfectionist.
An insane amount of takes.
What is it, Social Network? 500?
Yeah, the opening scene, if you've seen Social Network, the opening scene, the conversation they had, that was the scene, correct?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? They did like 500 takes of that scene. And Dufek
Ridiculous.
actually talked about, it was interesting because Fincher, even if a cup sitting on a counter in the background of a shot that you may or may not be able to see on camera, Dr. Dufek was talking about how Fincher would call cut, walk over there. He would move it an inch and a half to the right, then tilt it back, then move it back to exactly where it had been, and then they'd go back and do 50 more takes.
The man has vision.
But so he was afraid that during one of the 75 takes of Ben jumping off, which in all honesty,
it's fair,
reasonable.
It's fair.
It's like, yeah, it's, you know, you only got so many times. If I jump off a 4-foot platform 116 times,
exactly,
my chances of twisting my ankle one of those times is not going to let me play Batman in a few months.
And we need you as Batman.
Yes, yeah. No, I'm talking to some agents at the moment. I'm in the process.
My people are working on. But no, I mean, he saved Batman's life. I think that's really what it boils down to. And again, I just wanted that on recorded somehow. I wanted historical record to show Jim Dufek saved Batman's life.
Yeah.
Sadly, the movies could not save Batman.
Yeah, the movies were...
But those are higher up on the list, I'm sure.
Oh, I bet they are, yeah. Batman versus Superman.
It's got to be in the top 100.
Biggest twist of all time. A bigger twist than Gone Girl was Batman versus Superman, than both having the same mother named Martha. Or not the same mother, but mother's same name, Martha.
You're just jealous. That's screenwriting. Right?
I guess so.
Speaking of screenwriting, we watched a movie with a script. And the script was written by... what is it? Gillian Murphy?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. It's the author of the book.
Gillian Murphy? Gillian Flynn.
Gillian Flynn.
Yeah, and so that's what we call in the podcast biz a segue. So let's talk about the movie.
Let's get into it.
So overall, what do you think?
So I'll be transparent.
Okay.
Obviously, as has been stated, love Fincher. Think the guy's a visionary. I think this movie is fantastic because a visionary made the movie. But I have considered this since I first saw it. One of his, it's incredible. But just of the caliber that Fincher usually pops out, I think it's a lesser movie. But I still think it is
for sure
outstanding.
I'll agree with you.
A lesser movie of Fincher's catalog.
Fincher, yeah. Well, it's like they say. It's like Justin Bieber and Chinese food. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good.
That is, who says that?
I do.
Okay.
But no, I agree. When I watched it the first time, I remember not loving it. I thought it was good. I was, again, probably 15 or 16 at the time.
You didn't really understand toxicities in marriage at that
I
point.
did not understand this story at all.
You don't understand the themes.
I've seen it, I think, once. I think this is my maybe third time seeing it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was my,
Yeah.
second time, yeah.
So, like, I didn't really have a grasp. Here's the thing that I feel like we'll probably talk about over the course of this series probably quite a bit. Multiple viewings of films help because, like, it's always that thing of if I don't love something, sometimes the first viewing I'm not really sure why, and then I watch it again and again with the knowledge given to me by the Southeast Missouri State University TV and Film Department. I have more of a grasp
Fred
on
Jones.
The things I liked. Because there are a lot of things that I like. Again, this is a solid movie.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie.
It's good. I would say, great, even.
I would even.
It's hard not to when you have Fincher on board. I mean, we'll talk about that at a point. But I agree with you. It is definitely one of his weaker movies. Yeah. For sure.
But I mean, at the same time, even the first time I saw it, the first time I saw it, I really did love it, but I immediately thought it was one of his lesser movies. But it was good enough where I've been wanting to watch it again for a while. It was actually fun watching it again because that first time that I watched it, I'd only been living here about 3 or 4 months. So, and they show a lot of like stores and stuff that they show. I don't think they changed a lot of names. Like within the movie, Ben Affleck's character owns a bar called The Bar, and that is a bar that apparently before I moved here was open. It has been closed now for a while. But so I would see little things like that, and I would see the clock downtown because they have like this historic clock in downtown Cape. But it was fun because now I've been living here for about 2 years, and it was fun watching it a second time because now random alleyways that they would shoot, I was just like, I know exactly where that is. That's cool. That's interesting.
There was an alleyway shot that was very familiar. They go over the bridge. There's just spots around town that's very cool, and even like Giant City and St. Louis. I mean, when they're at the Arch, like there's moments that when they show the Arch, they're not at the Arch, but it was cool. again, picking that up because it had been some years since I'd seen it the last time. I mean, let's just dive in because, like, I think both of us. I think the best way to do it is kind of walk through the movie and talk about standouts. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to not talk about Fincher without talking about every movie he makes is so controlled in its camera work.
It's incredibly meticulous. Yeah, that was one thing that,
so particular. The shots, almost, I think you would agree with me here. Fincher has a almost robotic quality to his filmmaking. It's so pitch perfect. I mean, it's going to become apparent the more we talk about him. I love The Social Network. I think is his greatest film, and it is literally technically perfect.
Yeah.
I don't think there is a. I don't think there's a. I mean, there probably are that we're not aware of, but every camera movement, every line delivery, it is like masterclass filmmaking. Yeah. And so, again, in this movie, everything is so controlled. Everything is so still. It's not afraid to linger on shots.
That's one thing, like, with his shooting, that was one thing that I wrote down was I was taking some notes just while we were watching the movie, and the camera movements, just in general, everything that happens is just so smooth. And I feel like to touch on your comment about it being like almost like robotic, a lot of times when you're watching a Fincher film, it seems as if the camera directly responds to the movement of the actor.
Yes.
Obviously the camera is supposed to respond to the movement of the actor, but I don't know, it's weird. It's so precise. It's like it's tied, like the camera knows. Agreed. And then when he sits up in his chair, we're going to like slowly move to the left so that we can reveal this thing in the shot, and it's just incredible.
His movies again are so controlled visually that you think that it's still, but actually he uses a lot of camera movements. The thing is, agreed, it's tied so much to the movement of the character. You're exactly right. If someone were to stand up from sitting at a table, there's a small little tilt up, and you don't really recognize it because it is so subtle.
Yeah, and he'll tie it into a very important line of dialogue just got dropped, so you're into what they're saying, but the camera is just following them perfectly. And it makes sense because his start, well, I don't know if it was his start per se, but I know it had to have been very early in his career, was in camera work. I think he was, I was looking up something, I believe it said he was like a assistant director of photography or maybe just a camera operator, but he was involved in like Empire Strikes Back. He was involved in Tomb Raider, but it was always camera work. Yeah. And it makes sense now because his camera work is so precise and so pristine.
I think he is a camera... He's almost like a cinematography filmmaker first. Yeah. Visual. He's a visual filmmaker, which actually leads to... I actually think the biggest problem with this movie is apparent in the first, 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. And that's... So, I mean, so again, I'll probably talk about it a million times over this episode, so get ready. Social Network, written by Aaron Sorkin. Masterfully written, masterfully directed. The thing about those movies is Fincher, you care about characters, but for the most part, they're almost detached. It's almost like, not like a Yorgos Lanthimos killing of a sacred deer. They're just weirdos.
Yeah, they're different people.
But there's a coldness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To the performance. And it's very sharp and very, usually witty. There's like a lot of back and forth dialogue, but it's very cold. Yeah. And I think my biggest problem with the movie, and we'll talk about it the deeper we get in the film, I think, but it wants to be, I think Gillian Flynn, and I haven't read the book, full transparency, so it's probably that way in the book, that it's very, some of the dialogue is cutesy and it's trying to be relatable. I think.
there is a strange juxtaposition because there is some of the dialogue where they want you to be like rooting for this character, but then there's a big theme in the movie where Ben Affleck and his wife are terrible people. Both of them terrible people.
And I'm glad you bring that up because I was going to say it. I think Fincher likes to fill his movies for the most part with, and we'll dive into this later once we get into the actual relationship between the two leads, but he likes to fill his movies with broken characters,
Yeah.
which he does in this movie really well. Like you really buy into this like sociopathy and they're broken. They're damaged people.
Yeah.
And that plays well to his filmmaking style of just like very subtle, very robotic almost. But in that first 15 minutes, the script wants to be like, kind of like we're having fun and everybody's sweet and funny.
Like, here's some funny dialogue.
Exactly.
And, like, these guys have a cool
and
chemistry.
It just kind of flips against his filmmaking style.
Yeah.
And so I think that to me was a problem because I was expecting, now that I am aware of his style, Fincher-isms. And it was a little empty in that first act.
I think part of it is, I don't know, I've always thought, which this is an opinion completely, this is not any expert commentary, but I don't know, just from movies that I know of where the author wrote the script, I don't ever feel like that. I feel like it takes something away, and I think a part of it is because, and rightfully so, like it makes sense with a movie. When writing a screenplay, a big part of it is you're trying to cut out as much as possible.
100%.
You know, you want the style, you want the substance, you want everything you have, but you want to cut out as much as you can and still fill it with everything that it needs.
Exactly.
Because you can tell when a movie,
It's fat.
yeah, when a movie is fat. Such as like, who is it, Judd Apatow, that like the last third of his movies,
Yes.
they usually just kind of keep going, and like a lot of it is filled with stuff, which I love Judd Apatow. I think he makes fantastic movies, but a lot of the time in the last third, you can tell that there's something
100%.
going on, or there's stuff that they could trim
There's
out.
fat, yeah. There's
and
fat.
so when an author is writing the script for their own book, a lot of times because of how much more you can put in a book and how connected they got to all those large details that they put in there, I feel like it becomes like a hard area where the author doesn't want to give that stuff up, but it's stuff that really needs to be given up and
Agreed.
does not need to be
I
in there.
think I've heard the book is amazing. I've heard the book is incredible from
I'm
people
sure.
that I
Yeah.
tend to buy into their opinion.
Yeah, my
We
dad
agree.
read it, and I think he read it like 3 times. He
Exactly.
loved
There's a
it.
guy, Karsten Runquist, who is like a critic who says the book's a masterpiece, and
Yeah.
you know, it's the story is incredible.
Oh,
and
it's
and
fantastic.
I actually want to segue from that to the reasons why I think Fincher wanted it. But to wrap up kind of what that we were just talking about, I think, agreed, writing a script is different from writing a film. And probably, I mean, Sorkin is a screenwriter, right? That's why I think Social Network works so well, is because
Possibly one of the best screenwriters alive. Or
Agreed.
not possibly. He's one of the best screenwriters alive.
I would say he's, the best.
Yeah, and Sorkin again is who wrote the Social
Network and a bunch of other movies and TV shows you've probably heard or watched. But when you get a novelist, I just think it's just a different ballgame.
Yes, 100%.
And so, but with that being said, and this is probably where we'll dive into spoilery stuff, I definitely see why Fincher would be attracted to a story like this, because I mean, this story has a bunch of Fincher-isms.
Yeah.
Like, he loves investigations. I mean, we see that in Seven. We see that in Zodiac. He likes detectives
Yep.
solving an investigation. He likes that. He also likes, again, people who lean towards being sociopaths or psychopaths. We see that in Fight Club.
Yeah, and not diving into it where it's a person who's a murderer, but I feel like he's interested in people who are sociopaths or psychopaths living in the everyday world with the rest of us, and like how
Exactly.
those people, the people that aren't crazy enough, where Rosamund Pike's character was crazy enough to go on killing people.
For sure.
But I mean, Ben Affleck's character might have been a sociopath. Like he's got some.
And that actually, again, is a Fincherism. He's not to Rosamund Pike's level where I don't think Ben Affleck would kill somebody.
No.
I do think Fincher likes telling stories about toxic masculinity. Like Social Network is a great example. It's a different type of toxic masculinity, but it is nonetheless like Silicon Valley nerd toxic masculinity. You know what I mean? And he's drawn to that. I think Ben Affleck's character, very toxic masculine person. He even says,
which goes into one thing I was going to add on you saying Fincherisms, The Affair. He seems to be very interested in a lot of his stories of like a male character is having an affair on his wife or on his girlfriend or something's going on.
Ben Affleck's character says, "I'm so sick of being picked apart by women." That's a line.
Yes.
And like, it's a different toxic masculinity, but Neil Patrick Harris's character, he's very much tied up in her looks, Amy's looks. He wants her to look a specific type of way. He's obsessed with her. But again, that's toxic.
Yeah.
I think he's drawn to that. And there was
That is kind of a theme in the because she talks about Rosamund Pike's character, who plays Ben Affleck's wife in the movie, that goes missing. She complains a lot about the fact that Ben was trying to make her into the type of girl he wanted her to be.
Exactly.
But then when she goes to Neil Patrick Harrison's character later on in the movie to try to find some kind of like refuge as she's trying to figure out what she's going to do once all of her money has been stolen, he does the exact same thing. He's just like, oh, well, I want you to, here, I bought you new clothes.
Exactly.
And I want you to do this, and you dye your hair back to the way it was. Like, I want you to be the, the Amy that I loved and the Amy that was mine. And like, all these men are trying to shape her into what they want her to be.
I got this vibe. We're really diving into writing. I want to talk about like performances and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think a style. So like, there's a incredibly famous filmmaker from the 40s to 70s, I think, named Ingmar Bergman. And in Ingmar Bergman's movies, you see a theme a lot of life is good in short segments, and then the rest of it is pretty hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We get happiness in little bursts.
Yeah.
And I think you see that in a lot of his movies.
Yeah.
One thing I think Fincher kind of plays to in a lot of his movies is there's more bad people than there's good people, and they seem to get ahead.
Yeah.
And so like in this movie, it boils down to, this is a movie about dysfunction. I think there's a lot of different things going on. I think it's a movie about media. I think it's a movie.
The way the media was portrayed in this movie is perfect.
Agreed.
Through the entire movie, at the very beginning, everybody's so sad for him because his wife is missing. But then, so getting into like the heavy spoilers, basically what has happened in this movie is his wife his wife basically felt like she was being drug around into his life because they live in New York, but he is from Missouri. What is it, North Carthage? Or what is the town called?
It's West Carthage. I think it's something Carthage.
Yeah, something Carthage. And so they move back to his hometown because his mother is sick, and she quickly starts to feel as if he doesn't really want her to be a part. Their marriage grows very toxic, and she has no real life. She is just kind of his thing that, like, they got married, so he is constantly gone. So she gets to a point where she basically feels like he has ruined her entire life. So she decides she is going to essentially ruin his life. And at first she has decided she's going to commit suicide to bring it about, but then she ends up deciding against that. But so she frames the entire thing to make it look like he has murdered her. She puts her blood all over the floor and then cleans it up very sloppy with bleach. And so throughout, as this new evidence is coming out all over the place, the media is just flip-flopping. Like, at first they're just like, oh, this is so sad, this man has lost his wife. And then there is a scene where he smiles next to her missing picture, which is just oh my goodness,
that scene's the worst.
Every time you watch it, you cringe because you're just like, what are you
Why would
doing?
you do it?
Yeah.
And they give this explanation in the script that his mom raised him to be this very like sweet Missouri boy, and he's kind. He wants to have good manners around people, and he just is that type of person where it works against him.
It works against him, but at the same time, it's also kind of portrayed through the movie that like he is a complete flirt. Like, he's not a good guy. He's cheating on his wife with a girl who is a 21-year-old in his creative writing.
Front. He's a toxic dude.
Yeah,
they're toxic for each other. She's not the only one. Obviously, she goes much further than him, but he's a toxic guy, but he has this front of, I'm a sweet Missouri boy.
Yeah.
And so like, in that scene, you're just like, oh, you're trying to be like sweet, and you're trying to play that front of just like, my mama raised me right.
Yes.
But
the media, the way they portray it, because at first they're so sorry for him, and then whenever the evidence starts coming out, they like, he smiled in this picture, and there's this evidence making it look, and then he kind of redeems himself a little bit, but then the media is just like, oh well, maybe we don't really know the yada yada, and then all of a sudden it comes out that he was cheating on his presumed dead wife, and then so now the media hates him again, and then by the end of the movie, the media loves them, and they're the cutest couple, and it's the same Missy Pyle played a talk show host named Ellen Abbott in the movie. And she is the main person that they show that she flip-flops the whole way through. And that is media. Like, it's just public opinion just sways. Like, we're on your side. We hate you. We love you.
Dude, I was watching, similarly, I was watching Nightcrawler in the last, probably 2 weeks, a week. And I think it plays the same kind of, again, this is like really kind of a backdrop to the real story, which is of these two toxic people who are in this crazy relationship that just goes so far. But with the media background, I think it plays to the story comes first. She says, I just follow the story.
Yeah.
And the story plays to public perception. And if you think about it, in most scenes where they're outside, there's always a crowd. It's always they're playing the story to the crowd, to the consumer. And so, like, I think that he used, like, the crowd. It almost felt like very, like, Frankenstein. Like, we're walking around with pitchforks. They always had, like, signs that they were carrying.
Yeah.
And they were always, like, a blob. Other than her best friend, like, parting the Red Sea and walking down and, like, where's your pregnant wife? It's just this mass of people. And I think the media element plays to, it doesn't really matter what goes on behind closed doors. It doesn't really matter the truth of the situation. What story can we spin to the crowd of people out front?
Which more of the movie even touches on that. I do want to say really quick, I just said Missy Pyle. I'm pretty sure her name is Missy Pyle. So I apologize.
Missy Pyle.
Yeah. I don't know why I read that as Missy, but it's like a Star Wars name. But no, they play on that even more because so Tyler Perry is in this movie and he plays,
by the way, Tyler Perry, I think, did great. I don't know how
Me too. I wrote that down in my notes. Like, I like Tyler Perry enough. I won't lie. I like some of those. I know everybody dogs on him. I like some of the Medea movies. They're fun. But no, Tyler Perry, I feel like this is one of the few performances where the whole time I'm watching, I'm just like, this guy is killing it.
He really
it's fantastic. But he even talks about the fact whenever, he plays the lawyer that Nick hires on because he's a
big time,
a very famous lawyer, for defending men who are being accused of murdering their wives, or some
domestic
domestic problems with their wives. But he even says the same thing to him. Whenever Ben Affleck brings him on, he explains the whole situation. It's like, she's crazy. She's framing me to have murdered her, and like, I don't know what to do. He touches on the fact that he's just like, all right, basically what we have right now is two stories, and she is telling the perfect story. So we have to spin it to tell them that your story is the one that they should be following and not her story.
Again, it makes me wonder if when Fincher was reading this, because, I mean, he did it with Fight Club. He adapted a novel. It makes me wonder if that was one of the elements that really drew him in and was thinking, we could really tell a great story, a great visual story about that. Because, like, even the poster of the movie has the, what's the little running bar at the
log line?
Yeah,
Or
the ticker, is that what it's called? Something on the news channels, the live feed going on at the bottom. It has that on the bottom of the poster.
Oh, really?
And so it makes me think that it was one element, because I feel like that was writing wise one of the stronger elements, but also one of the more subtle elements. It's really, again, kind of playing a backdrop to the real story.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to move on to the actual story, because the actual story, I think, again, where we kind of started before we started talking about the media, it really is a story. I think it is like a story about dysfunction in a relationship to the nth degree.
Yes.
Like, it is this toxic man who ends up with this toxic woman.
Yeah.
And they're both sexually, they're very similar. They're both very attracted.
I forgot how many sexual themes are in the movie.
It's a very sexual movie, and they're very physically attracted to each other. That's a big point. They bring it up a lot in the script.
Yes,
all these little things they'll say, just like talk about looks, talk about it's vital in their relationship, the physical attraction, but also their chemistry is really good. And I think that is one of the deeper themes of the movie, which is it doesn't really matter if you're physically attracted to someone, and it doesn't really even matter if you have great chemistry. You can still be extremely toxic for one another.
Yeah.
And that shows once they're 4 years into their marriage?
Yeah,
I think
something like that. Yeah, because I think when her disappearance takes place on the morning of their, I believe, 5th year anniversary.
Yeah.
And another thing, with what we've said about the author getting away from the story, I just wanted to comment with what we've said about the author adapting it into the screenplay, and in our opinion, that sort of weakening it. It's a fantastic screenplay, regardless. I say my main problem is the dialogue.
I don't think I have a problem with the script directly as much as I have it stylistically. It kind of there's a conflict between filmmaking style and screenplay. I think maybe if the first 30 minutes were in another movie directed by a more kind of like straightforward thriller. Yeah. I'm trying to think of somebody who, I mean, almost like, what was that movie with Anna Kendrick, A Simple Favor? Remember that? Like tonally, I think it would fit in almost more like a comedy thriller. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of goofy, very relatable, but it's got that Fincher style. And so I think there's a conflict between script and screen until, I mean, really...
like 15, 20 minutes in, I don't know. It's weird how much you can see it at the beginning, how it's just like, there's something strange going on, but he irons it out as the movie is going on.
And I think that's an important point because I want to get your take on this. Because, again, it reminded me of... I think watching this really stood out. I think Fincher is like the master of the sequence. Not like a one-take sequence, but like... It's almost like a montage. Yeah. You know what I mean? When there's scenes where it's just like for example, when Nick is finding out.
Yeah, when he
goes
the clue.
To the woodshed.
Yeah.
And there's the tension is building. And then immediately we go to Amy, who has her whole sequence of A Girl Like Me. I think that's what the whole thing she keeps saying, like, he wanted a girl like me.
Yeah.
And
when she's writing one of her journals.
She's running away. And it reminded me in Social Network, again, of the Shaunathon sequence. Remember when he was like, at that point it was a Shaunathon, and they're doing the sequence of they're in Midori or something, and he's ordering drinks and everybody's laughing and they're bouncing back and forth. I think when it locked in for me is when Fincher got to be able, we have the setup established. Now we can really dive into the filmmaking. Yeah. And I don't know. Did you catch those sequences? Because there were several throughout.
Yes. Well, just the suspense building in general, and some of those scenes. Like, I've got a couple of them written down. Like, one of them was the the scene where they're showing him the journal entries. Like, that wasn't quite as much in the montage, but I don't know, just the subtle how much closer each shot gets as it goes back and forth. There were so many scenes in the movie that the tension building and the camera work with the tension building and the way they edit it together is just perfect and builds the suspense.
Agreed.
In the montage scene, one thing that I thought was kind of funny, that was interesting, because that was one thing that we had talked about while we were watching it, is there was a bunch of very interesting one-liners throughout the movie. And in that montage scene, as they're building up the suspense and he's figuring out the clue, and they are at Nick, who's played by Ben Affleck, they're at Nick's dad's house finding the journal, and so it's cutting back and forth, and it's one of the best montage scenes I've seen. Like, it just builds and builds so perfectly. The more that he figures out, the closer they get to finding what. So she has left this journal behind that's full of half truths to make Nick look bad, and she put it in a furnace to try to make it look like he burned it. And so the montage builds and it's getting more suspenseful, and they find the journal and they open it up and they're looking through it, and Nick is figuring this out, and he gets up and he grabs his coat, and then it cuts to one of the officers that's there with the detective finding it, and it's just shot cut, boom boom, Nick's doing this, they're finding this, boom boom boom, and then it's a close up on his face and he goes WTF. And I think the montage could have done without, maybe.
I agree. That was a choice, and it's not necessarily, I think, a choice that I would have made.
It was, it was very interesting.
You say that. I think one directing beat that I really bought into by the end of it, the first time or two, it actually was a little jarring. Agreed. Fincher, he really is one of the masters of tension right now. I mean, you look at his movies; they're suspenseful. Yeah. Zodiac, to me, is as far as crime suspense, I can't tell you one off the top of my head that really just tops that. I think it is the suspense crime movie. Yeah. Fincher, the way he builds suspense, again, with his lingering shots and his tight editing. And then one thing I really bought into in this one was he would have these sequences where it would be tense, cut, like exactly what you're saying. And then there would be something that happened, and then it would fade to black. And then it would come back up from black. Yeah. And it would say 5 days since
Yeah, it'd be like July 11th.
the night
like
of,
3
or the
days,
day
3
of.
days missing. That's what I
Exactly.
kept saying.
Yeah.
Like
3 days
5
gone.
days missing. Gone. Yeah, that was it. Of course. Gone.
the movie.
Gone Girl. It's just a little.
But dude, I love that because again, your suspense, it's building, and then release, and we get some closure, and then we start up another sequence. It really stood out to me, filmmaking wise. He just nails drawing you into a rhythm of scenes.
That was another thing. So it wasn't even a montage because it was one continuous scene. But in the scene where she kills Neil Patrick Harris, the scene. So as she's killing him and like flipping him over and trying to hold him down because she's just slit his throat and his blood is going everywhere. It keeps like cutting to black. Like, and there's this music going on that's building the suspense, and you are shocked because this woman is insane.
Yes.
And like the guy's creepy, but I don't really know if he deserved to die per se. No. He was trying to be nice to her. He's just a creep. There's just there's guys out there that are just the guy was obsessed with her. I mean, it's alluded to that he did creepy stuff in the past, but I don't really honestly.
I mean, he would.
They don't really say, but I don't know if that was supposed to be true or not.
It's that toxic masculinity, except this time I think there is a kind of a revenge element. I mean, you think about like Social Network he was being a toxic. He was using toxic masculinity against his girlfriend at the top of the movie, and she never really got justice. You know what I mean? And it stuck with him. Again, he likes characters that have broken pieces, and so that stays with him throughout the movie, even to the end when he goes like finds Erica's page and he's like refreshing the page. You can tell it stuck with him.
Yeah.
This movie, I feel like, you know what it honestly reminded me of, and I wanted to talk about it when we talk about performance, but now's as good a time as any. In Social Network, again, I apologize for all the Social Network. It is my Fincher movie. And so usually when I compare anything Fincher-wise, it always comes back to Social Network. It reminded me of, because Fincher always does have female characters that are grounded in reality, whereas the male characters usually are either in a fight club or they're
narcissistic.
And usually there is the Rashida Jones character that really grounds Mark Zuckerberg, and Eric Albright really grounds Zuckerberg. I mean, she sets him off, but really usually they're the voice of reason to these extreme male characters. In this one, I almost feel like in Social Network, the one good character who gets screwed, and again, it's the Fincher move of bad people come out ahead and good people get left behind, which is Eduardo Sanchez.
Yes.
He has a girlfriend played by Brenda Song, and she's like a crazy person, and she like lights his clothes on fire because he was gone, and she was checking his balance, his bank statement, and his texts, and she like tries to again light his clothes on fire, and then he freaks out and breaks up with her. I almost felt like Fincher took that archetype of a character of like crazy person, and let's what if we pit Brenda Song against Zuckerberg.
Yeah, but a Brenda Song that is just as intelligent as not Brenda Song. I'm not saying Brenda Song is more or less intelligent. I'm saying the character
in Social Network.
Yeah, is like let's take that character archetype, raise it to the intelligence level of a Mark Zuckerberg, and then put her with a regular guy because Nick Dunn, he's a crappy guy, but he's kind of just a regular dude. He's not a genius, but she's Rosamund Pike's character is a genius 100%. In this movie in a very terrifying way.
Exactly.
But to the suspense building, that was one thing that had stuck out was in the scene where she kills Neil Patrick Harris. The scene is continuous of her pushing him on the bed. It's not cutting to different moments in time, but it constantly blacks out. It keeps blacking out while the music is going. And I don't know. I thought it was one of the most. I didn't know. I don't know if I realized it last time or if it stuck out to me, but I thought that was it was weird to me how much suspense it built,
dude. And it's
when it kept blacking out.
Easily, since I saw it the first time, I always don't look forward to that scene because it just is so. It makes you feel gross. It makes you feel. I don't know. It's like it is the climax of the movie. I would argue, as far as action goes. Yeah. And it is the payoff of that tension in the darkest way possible. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And visually, it's a tough watch.
It's interesting also, I think,
to get through.
Because of I guess juxtaposition again is the right word. A lot of stuff in the movie is so clean. Everything is so clean. And especially when you get to Neil Patrick Harris's house, like he's filthy rich. So everything is pristine and neat and clean. And then that scene is filthy.
Agreed.
Because it starts out with a sex scene, which is already connotation-wise, in a way, you know what I mean? Just like it's like a dirtier thing that's happening.
Exactly.
And then, when the blood starts going everywhere, like there's this weird
Agreed.
conjoining of these different vibes going on.
Visually.
It's this beautiful bed, this beautiful white bed, and there is blood everywhere. And visually, it's just striking and interesting.
It does completely draw you in. Agreed. Fincher, again, robotically, in set design, he usually does work within these really minimal, very pristine spaces. And you're right. It's a great way to just throw you off your balance of just like, obviously, visually, the room has changed. But tonally, the room has changed.
Yeah.
She's really, I think that is her breaking point as a character.
Mm-hmm.
She's making plans, and she's doing things that hurt people, but she never physically hurts somebody. She never takes that leap to hurt someone.
Well, that's part of it, because if she was smart enough to fake that whole murder, she was smart enough to kill her husband and get away with it.
Exactly.
But she didn't.
She didn't.
Yeah.
Because again, I think
It was like a game she
the
was
whole
playing.
time she's skirting the line of like, am I really going to go all in?
Yeah.
And that's the moment. And really, that's kind of those top shots, which is her laying in bed with Nick at the beginning, and she looks out and she's kind of doe-eyed, and you think she's innocent, and then when you see her at the end,
There's this evil, scary, like
Exactly.
that was interesting, because the opening and the ending shot is all I think exactly the same.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, it's like this beautiful, and Ben Affleck has a line of dialogue that he says during the shot at the beginning and the end. It's the same line of dialogue. And at the beginning, it's kind of confusing, but it's also this beautiful, kind of serene scene. And at the end, it's just like, this is terrifying.
Yeah, dude.
Like,
And she has all the
sucks.
power.
Yeah.
She really does.
Yeah,
and
completely.
it is terrifying. I want to dig on his performance really quick. I wanted to know if you caught, and this is actually, if you haven't dug into Fincher's catalog, I really just implore you, please do. They're so good.
It's fantastic.
But did you notice Fincher loves? So not to get too heavy-handed with the filmmaking terms, but I feel like this is pretty simple, so I shouldn't preface that. But in filmmaking, usually you shoot warm to cool, so that's blues to oranges.
Yeah.
So if a scene's cool, it's blue. Visually, it's going to be a more blue colored scene. Warm, blues, grays, whites, blacks, stuff like that. Warm is going to be browns, oranges, reds, things like that.
Yeah.
And that's usually, for the most part, you stick within those two colors. Visually, it looks the best. Yeah. That's just how it has always been.
Cold hard facts.
Fincher, in this movie as well, but in the past, in his other movies, and it stuck out in this one, he likes gold and yellow, and he likes greens. Did you notice? And in Fight Club, I mean, it gives a kind of a dinginess to everything, especially when they're doing underground stuff. But a lot of this movie has like a gold tint, yellow tint to it.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting kind of contrast to what you usually are seeing. You're usually seeing.
I kind of wonder if, it's got a gold tint, and it makes me wonder if it has something to do with the uppity lifestyle that is portrayed. Because, so Ben Affleck's character moved from Missouri, so he's like a small town guy. Like, he's an aspiring writer, but he's not really making very much of it. He's working as a creative writing professor, and it's one of his students actually that he starts the affair with. But they live very lavishly because her parents are very wealthy.
Yeah.
And so, there's just a big theme of wealth, and it kind of makes me wonder if, sometimes it's like when people read poetry and they read way too much into it, and it's just like, that is not what the author was saying. It makes you wonder if the gold lighting was to kind of keep that.
I think everything Fincher, because he has a specific vision.
Yeah.
Some would say visionary.
You might.
But I think everything is done for a reason. So
Speaking of, I wanted to touch actually on his attention to detail because it is fantastic.
So good.
So, I mean, as you would be able to expect with filmmaking, like you're shooting scenes that have correlating props or well, I'm going to get into props, so I'll just stop there.
Okay.
Scenes that have correlating props, they're not shot back to back. So it's not like, you just used this and so it has this mark on it. So now, you got to pay attention to that kind of stuff. And something I thought was very interesting was there is a scene where for their anniversary every year, his wife sends him basically on the scavenger hunt and gives him a bunch of clues that lead him to the next one, lead him to the next one, that lead him to his present. Mm-hmm. So they find one of those clues at the very towards the beginning of the movie, and Ben Affleck starts realizing throughout the movie that these clues are made to look like they're just the little anniversary thing, but she is trying to make him discover that she is framing him. Mm-hmm. Like she's trying to show him that she's framing him.
She's like sticking it to him a little bit.
Yeah.
And in a way that, because he has those notes, but he can't really use them as evidence. Because it really doesn't prove anything.
Yeah.
But with a lot of those exposition heavy early scenes, we see their backstory and a lot of those, private moments between them. And every note has a little, a reference to something from their past that sticks it to him just a little bit.
Yeah, and like lets him more and more understand what is actually going on here. But just attention to his incredible detail. There's a scene, so when he starts kind of getting the vibe that maybe there's it seems like he's not really sure why, but he's kind of suspicious about these notes, and he starts feeling like he should not keep showing the cops these notes because they've seen like the first two. But he tells her when they read the second one, which is supposed to lead him to the third place, he acts like he doesn't know what she's talking about. He doesn't know what that is. He does know what it is, so he ends up. She's trying to lead him to his dad's house, and his dad doesn't live. The house is empty. His dad lives in a
It's like a shack.
What do you call it? Like I don't know. Well, no, but his dad lives in like a home.
Basically. A care facility.
But so he goes, finds the third letter, and then the detective, it turns out, is like following him around. So she ends up showing up there and is just like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Because she for some reason kind of has an inkling as well that the dad's house is what the note was referring to. Mm-hmm. But so he goes in there, finds it, and then an alarm ends up going off. And he ends up finding out that the detective has been following him because she shows up immediately. So he hides the letter and doesn't show it to her. He puts it in his back pocket. And then like an hour later in the movie, or maybe not an hour, but a while later in the movie, he I don't think he had opened it yet, or maybe he had, I don't think he had opened it yet. It's actually what leads up to the montage that we were talking about earlier, where while he's figuring out the letter, the cops are finding her journal that she has left for them to find. And when he pulled out the letter, the creases in it was exactly as if it had been in somebody's pocket. Which, like, I just feel like on a set that big, it's very unlikely that they were just, after he put it in his pocket for those few scenes, they were like, oh, save that for later. Mm-hmm. But it was just because I was thinking, if I was making a movie, I probably wouldn't have thought of that. I would just been like, make sure we get another letter that says clue number 3 on it. And or another envelope. But, like, he had even taken the time to make sure that it looked, because we knew that it had been put in his back pocket. But I don't know.
I think his
attention to detail
is a testament to masterful auteur level filmmaking, where like every aspect of the film, everything has a reason. Mm-hmm. So like, your attention to detail goes beyond just performance and camera work. It is set design. It is props. It is, again, like you made reference to earlier, if there's a cup in the background that is off just an inch, then that isn't, everything in the frame has a purpose and should look a specific type of way. And it adds to the storytelling. Mm-hmm. Even if it's not, if anything, it just adds to the realism and it sucks you in. Yeah. And that tension builds. So last thing I want to cover, and I feel like there's quite a bit to discuss. So the performances from Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike, I think I wanted to get your opinion, because I feel like it made me wonder if they shot this chronologically. Typically in filmmaking, you don't shoot chronologically anymore. Mm-hmm. You, based on scheduling, scheduling. So you usually just shoot them out of order, what works best for the crew. But I definitely feel like Affleck was the weaker link at the top. I felt like he was struggling with some of the script, and again, it may be some lines he was forced to give, but at first I didn't remember not really liking his performance. And so I was just like, maybe he's just a weak link in the movie. But then by the end,
Yes, I was about to say
he
really got into it.
he's so good by the end. And again, it makes me wonder, was there something about the way they shot it?
That could actually make sense because, like we talked about, the first 15 minutes seem very like. It seems like they're trying to get their style here, or like he's trying to hone it in, and then 15, 20 minutes in, he hones it in,
Exactly.
and that would make sense if they shot it chronologically. Because it's the same with the acting. The acting all just solidifies as it goes on and gets better and better.
Agreed. And I do think the fact that I think there is, again, the movie depends on that crux of they are not good people. You start and you think they're both good people. And maybe that's it. Maybe they were struggling to. Maybe it felt off because they were portraying bad people who had the guise of being good people. But when you lock in and you realize what's going on, and they get to be fully themselves. Yeah. I mean, I think the performances are really, really great.
Oh, they're outstanding. And it's funny, with them starting out as being like you think they're good people. It's just hilarious in an incredible way. It's hilarious how back and forth it goes. Because it starts out and it's like, oh, I guess these are good people. And oh, no, his wife's missing. And then it goes on and it's just like, oh, shoot, he is not a good person. Like, by all accounts, his wife is an angel, but he sucks. And then as it goes on, it's just like, oh, shoot, it turns out they're both bad people. And then as it really goes on, it's just like, she is way worse than him. This woman is
100%.
an evil
And
psychopath.
Going back to that kind of theme, which the performances, as it should, sell it 100%, that they are toxic for each other. And you see the early groundwork laid kind of early on. Her family her mom and dad, Rosamund Pike's Amy. Yeah. Her mom and dad are writers of this children's book franchise called Amazing Amy. And basically what it alludes to in the script is her parents took bits of her childhood and manipulated them and turned them into children's books and then sold them on a mass scale. Yeah. And
so like she would play an instrument for a few months and then be like, I can't figure. I'm not interested in this. And then in the children's book, it was like Amazing Amy becomes a world-class saxophone player.
Agreed. And so it's like her childhood was hijacked by this franchise. Which, by the way, I wanted to ask: does it justify? This was always one of the struggles I had with the movie. Do you think the fact that she was Amazing Amy justifies that everyone cares so much? Like, everybody. Like, it is a national news story.
Yeah, no, I think that's, like, part of it. Because there was already, like, a following. It's supposed to be set up in the I believe it's supposed to be set up in the movie as if, like, Amazing Amy is like a Dr. Seuss book. It's like a book... Even if your parents didn't read it to you as a kid, like you've heard of Amazing Amy, like everybody. So no, I think that's part of it. Okay. Yeah, that's why everybody was freaking out because it was just like, Amy of Amazing Amy her fame has gone missing.
It worked better this time. I remember the first time watching it, I was just like, really? Everybody cares this much about? But
yeah, I think it's all based off that franchise and the fact that everybody had technically heard of her.
So that's a red flag. That's a red flag in a relationship that her childhood was basically taken from her. Yeah. And then there's several points of trauma for Nick. Like, his mom died of cancer. His dad has dementia. And it seems like his dad had kind of a rundown life after he got divorced from his mom. It's almost alluded to a little bit. They work at this bar. I don't know if you picked up at the top when he was like, him and his sister are always drinking. They're always drinking.
Really?
Every scene.
That's very interesting. I did not catch
Almost every scene that they share together, she hands him a beer, she's drinking something, and I think there's a little bit of alcoholism maybe slipped in there. At the top when he comes in and she says, like, what's wrong? And he goes, pour me a bourbon. And she gives him this look. And again, I think Nick, both people, there are red flags in these relationships. Yeah. But they're very sexually attracted to each other. Yeah. There's a lot of chemistry. They have fun conversations. And it shows you, again, if you ignore the red flags, it can spiral into turning Amy into a killer and this conniving mastermind.
Spiteful, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Rosamund Pike just absolutely sells it. To me, the thing that I could compare it to is Billy Bob Thornton in Fargo season 1.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm? Every scene that he is in, he's 10 steps ahead of where everyone else in the scene is at.
Yeah.
And
The only time
she
I
kills
thought it was a little weaker on Rosamund's part was at the beginning of the movie when they're setting up like the history of their relationship and like when they first met and all that. I don't know. There was some of it that I just wasn't fully sold on, but like the more I think about it, I think a lot of that had to do with the dialogue.
Yeah.
But that's another part of it. Like with some of the dialogue, because like I had said before, I thought some of the dialogue was weak. But that was one thing that touches on their performances and also on Fincher's directing, is that there were some lines of dialogue that should not have come across good, but they came across really well because they performed them so well.
Agreed.
And
he can pull a performance.
yeah, he
for
really
sure.
can. On the 74th try, he gets it. I think another part of it, which is interesting in the story, is I think when we're seeing the formation of their relationship, I think we're almost supposed to be seeing, because in her journal, so a big part of her plan that she ends up coming up with is she's going to write this journal, and she writes it all in a few days.
They're both writers.
Yeah, they're both writers. She writes it all in a few days, but she makes it seem like she's been writing this journal for like the entire time they've been in this relationship. So the journal entries, she tries to make them think this has been an up-to-date, in real-time journal she's been keeping when it's not. So she starts out with all the fairy tale stories at first. And then as time goes on, she starts adding in little lies like, oh, well, today he pushed me. Like we got into this fight and he pushed me, which like it did not happen.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that I thought I was not sold on the beginning when the relationship was forming, because I think that we are supposed to be witnessing the beginning of the relationship through the lens of the fairy tale story
Agreed.
she's writing.
There
in her
were
journal.
some of those journal entries, especially in the first, I'd say, hour, that definitely when she was reading them, I was not working for me. But you're 100% right. Looking back, they're fake.
Yeah.
It plays this character of a that's like pure.
Yeah.
She's perfect. She's amazing. Amy.
Yeah.
I got a little Twin Peaks vibe from it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Diary of Laura
I can see
Palmer.
that. Yes, yeah.
Everybody is so upset about Laura, and everybody's so upset about Amy. And no, agreed. Some of those early diary entries, but it plays into the character that she has crafted this perfect relationship. That the first sign that he is being toxic masculinity, he's showing signs of toxic masculinity, is the one where he's lost his job and he's playing video games. And he's just like, he's kicked back on the couch and he's got empty Chinese
food everywhere.
And
a lot of Chinese. There's no way he ate all that Chinese food. She was throwing away. That had to have been. I don't know if that was supposed to be days of Chinese food or what exactly.
And
was going on.
he bought a MacBook and she's like, "What do you need a laptop for?" For laptopping. And it was
Is that a quote?
that was an actual quote.
That's very interesting.
But that's probably not real. Do you remember the scene where she's laying out her plan on how to get out and how to escape, and she hands him the bill? Or like she hands him the
To the life insurance
policy,
to sign.
and it's very much, again, very robotic. If he's just like
he's like drinking a beer, watching a game. She hands him a beer, and he takes a sip, and then she hands him the deal to sign, and he like barely takes his eyes off the screen, signs it real quick, and then puts it back. And then she uses that later because, as you would imagine, it would be very suspicious because she basically does all the paperwork, but he's the one that signs all the paperwork, so it looks like he did all the paperwork.
the paper trail leads back to him.
So it looks like he boosted his wife's insurance policy by like $1 million, and then 3 months later she goes missing.
Exactly.
And
Dude, I mean, that's the thing. Where the script faltered, performance-wise, they nailed it. By the end, Affleck was nailing every line delivery.
Yes, like whenever they're showing him the journal entries, they get to a point where they're just like, "Is this your wife's journal?" And he's like, "I know nothing about that journal." And she's like, "Okay, well, let's go through some of this. Let's play a game of true and false." So she starts like showing little journal entries about like the history of their relationship, and he's just like, "Yes, that is true. That is true." And then it gets to the point where she says that he pushed her, and he's like, "That is false." And then I don't know why, but the line makes me laugh so much every time because one of them was like on Valentine's Day, or maybe it was on their anniversary. I can't remember. She tried to buy a gun, and they like end up going and talk to some like crackhead in some alley about it. So they like verify that she had tried to buy a gun, and they show him that part of the journal entry, and she's like, "Is it true that your wife tried to buy a gun?" And he just like, it's the perfect delivery. He just goes, "I highly doubt it, but maybe." And like, the way he does it,
Agreed, dude.
it's so
He was
good.
knocking
I
it-
think it's one of his best performances
I
I've
would
seen.
I would agree 100%. He knocked it out. She knocked it out. And but where I do think the script did falter on some of the dialogue, it really does. I mean, the story is so solid.
I know the story. That's the thing. Like, even with my the dialogue problems that I had, the story makes up for it so much.
So-
The movie kind of ends on a dark tone. She takes a sperm sample of his and gets herself pregnant because she ends up coming back home to him. If
Yeah.
you've seen the movie, you know,
Yeah.
and gets herself pregnant. And so he basically makes the choice in the end that he's just like, I'm not abandoning this child. Like, I will fake this for 18 years and then I will leave her and I will have a relationship with my kid.
It just plays. The ending just plays to the dysfunction of their relationship. The
Yeah.
fact that she won and she was so conniving and she got all this planned out. And I mean, I think it's kind of led to believe that he likes her more at the end. Like when the final scene between him and his sister, and she's just like, "You're gonna stay with her, aren't you?" And his tone has kind of changed. I got that
Oh, yeah.
when she won, when she had all the cards in her hand, I think he kind of respected that.
That's
and
interesting.
that he appreciated that about her.
I didn't get that vibe. I felt like he despised her. I felt like at the end, a big thing they were showing was his character development. Because the way that he is built up to be throughout the movie, he 100% seems like the type of guy that's just like, I don't care about her. I don't want this child. She is insane. I'm out. But at the end, he's just like, no, I'm not going to abandon this kid.
Okay.
And that's what I thought it was trying to show. But I felt like he despised her up to the end. But
I would agree with you in a more optimistic movie, but I just feel like the major theme of this movie, and I agree, 100%, it does not end on a happy note. It's a dark note. It's a dark ending.
It's him like telling the news that they're having a baby, and then the woman is just like, oh my gosh, and she like hugs Amy, and he looks so upset.
I know. I think they feed on dysfunction.
Yeah.
And I think when she has all the cards and she's won, I think that's just further dysfunction.
I feel
And
that. That's kind of just what I was getting at the end. Is I felt like it, because it ends on a dark note.
Yeah.
But I kind of took it. They were trying to be like, but the one good thing that came out of this is Nick Dunn became like, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Or like he is becoming better. He is trying to make choices to be a better guy. But maybe not. But regardless, just the last one line
I was gonna say, we'll see. Like, this is a real story.
Yeah,
we'll see in a couple years.
We'll see in movie 2.
We'll see in the sequel.
Yeah, Homegirl.
Homegirl.
But no, the last weird one-liner.
That'd be so good, homegirl.
The last weird one-liner is at the very end whenever he's telling his sister, like, I'm going to stay with her because I'm going to raise this baby. Like, I'm going to fake this for 18 years and then I'm out. She is heartbroken and she's like, I can't just, like, sit here and watch you play house and, like, yada, yada. And they're talking about it. And he's just like, you are, like, my one system of support. I need you to be with me on this. And she's like, she goes, of course I'm with you. And she like looks up, she's crying. She goes, I was with you before we were even born.
We both laughed at that line.
Yeah, because it's just a very straight, I don't know, there's just like little lines throughout. But in all honesty, the performance is pretty good. Like they kind of...
She kind of got it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was on the right track.
I mean, honestly, those one-liners were so weird that I don't even know if you could perform it that well. I don't think it was their fault that they were delivered strange. Those are just all strange lines.
There definitely was, and I mean, it's a dramatic story for sure, but there was a tinge of melodrama in a lot of the lines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where
WTF.
well, like, you know, again, going back to Social Network. Social Network's very subtle with it's very realistic with its dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
There's not melodrama. Things are, I mean, the situation is melodramatic in a way, but also, you know, they're kind of dorky guys, and so, you know, a lot of the dialogue is quick and fast and witty, but it's never. You never feel like, oh, they wanted me to feel bad for Eduardo. Like, you feel bad for Eduardo because of the situation. In this one, there were some lines that I was just like, okay, well, you were with me before we were born. I agree. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's I was
interesting
with
line.
you before we were born.
But I think that also shows his character development because he's making a decision for himself. Because if you think about it, Amy, one of her big problems with him is that, like, you know, she bought the bar for him. She's probably the one that bought their house because he's not making money being a creative writing teacher. Like, if you think about it, Nick is always relying on others. Even whenever they hire Tyler Perry as the lawyer, he's just like, yeah, but his, you know, his cover is $100,000. Margot is immediately just like, okay, I've got $47,000 saved up. I've got this much. Yeah, he's always relying on others, and that is one of the first times that he, for himself, because he feels like it is more like he's not relying on somebody else to fix this problem. He's like, nope, this is my situation. I didn't get myself into it, but I'm in it, and I'm going to raise this child.
I think that is a completely valid take.
But it's completely wrong.
No, there's something about the themes that are so pessimistic in a way.
I mean,
that they're just so broken, and their relationship is so far gone to the point where she's killing people for him. They turn on each other so quick in the media that they're just so far broken. But, ladies and gents, that's the beauty of the film.
It is.
That's not just this film. You'll see. I'm sure probably 500 or 499 more times. Is that we can have different ideas about the endings or what the point of it was, and truly, both of us are probably right. In a way, you know what I mean? Could
be like the director meant this, but the writer meant this, or the actor was trying to portray this, but the director was going for this.
Of something so abstract like a 2001 that it is. I'm sure there's
so many
100 different ways you could take that movie.
Plus, that's just something that's so beautiful about filmmaking is it's so collaborative that everything that happens gives you all these different ideas and ways to interpret it. And in a lot of ways, like, yes, the director is at the helm, but they're so collaborative that it's just like, there was 50 different people's ideas going into how this scene was shaped.
Exactly.
And it's
right here in Cape Girardeau.
It's right here in Cape Girardeau.
Well, on that note, I think that's gonna wrap up the first episode.
I think so.
Next, $4.99. Again, you can check out in the YouTube description and possibly in the podcast description. We're gonna link that list, and you can follow us. But $4.99 is something I'd never heard of. T500. What's our next movie?
Next week's film is Dr. Matthews the Gambler, directed by Fritz Lang.
That sounds awesome.
That sounds like a good movie.
That sounds like it's going to be really good. And we will...
It's made by a director named Fritz Lang.
Fritz Lang, it is.
If you know anything by Fritz Lang, it's probably the movie M, which is a German movie from...
Which is definitely on this list.
It's got to be. It's fantastic. I'm excited to get to it.
It's so good. 9 years from now.
Yeah. A long time. Because that's got to be near the top. That movie is phenomenal. It's ahead of its time.
Thanks to the Arrow Podcast Network for having us.
Bless
in the world?
Bless you so
How
much.
did we end up on here?
I don't know. This started as a quarantine podcast so that we would have something to do.
Here we are.
But
other than that, I think we'll catch you in the next one.
Yeah, on the flip side.
Bye.
See ya.
You have reached the end of the Top 500 with Jonathan and Jake.